what I thought leadership was completely like the opposite. I thought it was like having to literally be there more, tell people what to do, like let's micromanage them, let's get in the way. It's really astonishing to me, like, and this is going to sound horrible, but it's the lack of disrespect that owners have for like butting in and becoming the bottleneck. And I can say that because I was one of those owners. That's not leading, that's like interrupting, right? That's
Yes.
micromanaging. And so I learned that for me to really become a great leader is that I had to work on myself. It's who did I need to be to show up?
Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HR Huddle. I'm your host, Teri Zipper. I'm the CEO and managing partner at Sapient Insights Group, and we're back for another exciting episode of HR We Have a Problem. This is the show where we like to break down the big and most relevant HR issues of the day. We help you make sense of what they mean, and we talk about what you might do about them. So joining me today is Libby DeLucien. Libby is a serial entrepreneur, and she's also a fellow podcaster on the Work to Find platform. If you haven't been out there, she's out there. Her podcast is called One Layer Deep. Welcome, Libby. It's great to have you and a fellow podcaster on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I
Yeah.
love the name of your podcast, by the way.
It's funny you say that because at one point we actually we did a couple of episodes early on. We had somebody else leading the podcast at the time, and when they left, we thought about just not doing it because nobody really wanted to do it. I in particular had no interest in doing a podcast whatsoever, but something about that name just kept telling me somebody's got to pick this up. Somebody's got to do this. So I decided to go for it, and I love doing it. It's a blast. It really is
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of
a fun way
fun.
to meet people in a virtual world.
Yeah, and just learn a lot. I mean, I learned the good thing about my podcast, I hope help other people learn, but I also learn stuff at the same time. So it's a good time. As I mentioned in the intro, you are a serial entrepreneur starting some very interesting businesses, and you've got deep expertise in hiring and company culture and even crisis leadership, all requirements of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, when you start a company, you are the C-suite.
Yep, whether you want
Yeah.
to be or not.
Yeah. So I was hoping we could talk about what you learned through that process as a result, what led you to create some of the companies that you did. Particularly, I think you created a recruiting company. I'd also like to talk about some of the challenges people, employees, leaders, and some of the process. I know you've delved deep into sort of process, and that's really helped you be successful multiple times over. So, does that sound like a good plan to you?
Sounds like a great plan.
Awesome. Then let's get into the huddle. So all about you. Let's talk about you for a minute. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and where did you get this entrepreneurial bug?
So, a little bit about me. I am a mom. I have three kids. I am married, second marriage. And I would just say, like, to me, I feel like I'm your average, regular person. Nothing spectacular. Like, for the listeners, like, I only graduated from high school. I did very well in school because as an entrepreneur, you have two sides to that. You either did horrible in school because you couldn't sit still or you wouldn't listen, or you learn how to manipulate the system to your benefit.
Yeah.
I manipulated the system to my benefit. So I did really well, but I again, I'm a mom, a wife, and the oldest of three kids. I've always been super, super organized and structured, and I just found out recently why that is. I found out earlier this year. So I found out at like 44 because I my birthday's in February. So I found out in January that I have aphantasia. And
What is
everybody's
that?
like, "What is that?" And it sounds like a Disney movie. Aphantasia. So there's spectrums of a 1 to 5, and I'm on a 5. And so it means I have no ability to envision in my mind. I cannot see anything. So if you imagine a red apple, people close their eyes and they see that red apple, right? Sometimes they can even taste it or smell it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you taste and smell something, then you can envision the thing in your mind. It also works in reverse. I have zero images in my mind. I don't dream in pictures either or images. And I found this out going through like a deep meditation exercise with in a mastermind group with Dan Martell. So I was in Dan Martell's high level SaaS owner group called Boardroom, and he always brings us a challenge. And so he brought us this like deep meditation exercise, like to get to next level you. And they were saying, well, what did you see? And I'm like, when it was my turn, I was like, I didn't see anything. And they're like, what do you mean? So I started to research it. And anyways, I found out that's why I'm so process orientated. Like you said, I dive into process, which has now been a superpower. But, it was kind of almost devastating because I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've been shorted or shortchanged for the longest time when I found this out. But then I also said, how can I use it to my benefit?
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to learn that about myself. But yeah, I've always been systems based. And as far as entrepreneur, I've never actually been a W-2 employee.
Really?
Yeah, I've always either owned my own business or been subcontracted as a 1099.
Which is a
Yeah.
very popular thing to be right now. It seems like there are a lot of gig workers, which was kind of predicted, right? For 2025, a lot of people would be gig workers at this point in our economy, and we are seeing that actually.
Yeah, we see that in home service as well. A
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
So I know one of the challenges that you've focused on is hiring. Obviously, if you're starting your own businesses, that's one of the biggest challenges, right? You've got to do all the hiring or at least get the process started. What did you learn about the hiring process and how to find the right people?
So when I went through a divorce, and during that divorce, I needed to figure out how to control my time. So I started up a professional organizing and cleaning company because I'm like, hey, I can do those things. I can control my time. And as we grew, and especially when COVID hit, we exploded. Like we had so much business that we couldn't handle it. So I started to hire. And what I found was the traditional way of hiring was extremely slow and brutal when it came to entry level positions. I would clean houses all day, run to a Starbucks, change my clothes. I live in Southwest Florida, so it's hot and you're sweaty and you're like trying to put that suit jacket on so you can go do an interview, and nobody's there. Like they ghost you at the interview.
Yeah.
So what I learned was one is if you're very good at a trade or a skill, like people want to use you. But where a lot of entrepreneurs fall off is they're not good at the hiring. They're not good at the HR part because they don't know anything about it. It's like you only know what you know. So I learned that I had no idea what I was doing. And I learned that it was the bottleneck that was keeping me from growing. Like I couldn't grow, but I couldn't get out of the field to do the interviews because then I wouldn't have any work or any revenue coming in. So it's kind of like I was in this limbo of, well, I got to keep servicing the customers, but I need to focus on hiring and HR and recruiting. And so that's when I went to the drawing board and I created the system of what now our software is, WootRecruit, where we recruit for hundreds of home service companies. And I created a system to take the applicant through a journey. I thought to myself, if I have no more time, who has the time? And the applicant has the time. If you're a business owner, you're strapped for time. And it's part of, there's a book, actually it's right here because I'm rereading it. It's called Exponential Organization. And it's how unicorn companies are made. Unicorn companies are 100 million in 10 years. And you have to leverage something. You have to leverage an asset. Airbnb, they leverage houses. Uber, they leverage cars. And so I thought to myself, if I have no more time, I need to leverage something to grow. And so I decided to leverage the applicant's time. So the process is made to really attract the applicant, and it was like non-conventional of what an applicant is used to going through. So it was very attractive to them. And we used, yes, automation and tech. But I didn't want to take the human element out of recruiting. So we're very specific in what I automated and how I touch them. And from there, I learned a lot of lessons on how to perfect it over time. And then I was lucky that I was already in home service, in cleaning, because I can then you ask my industry friends, like, hey, could you use this and see if it works for you too? So therefore, I wasn't just like creating this crazy idea. Well, it was a crazy idea, but it worked. And so the more and more people I got to try it, the more and more it worked. And so learning from that also was I could fix someone's recruiting issue. I could get them the applicants to the door, but I learned that so many people don't know how to interview. They don't know how to interview. They don't interview legally. Like the things people ask on applications or in the interview process, I'm like, oh no, we can't do that. Even if you own the company, we can't ask that. You can't say that.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care. And I
Yeah.
learned that there was a really big gap in education when it came to the recruiting process, especially in small businesses.
Yeah. Well, and on both sides, right? Like even the applicant, I've had applicants interview while laying in bed on video. I mean, there's some learning there, right? There's some people
Yes.
who kind of need to know what this process looks like. But I also, during that same time, during COVID, I was working with a small company who, had to furlough some people as a result of COVID because they were a restaurant. And so I was helping them with like some of their processes and getting their checks through the Paycheck Protection Program and all of that. And the other thing I found out about that generation was that they didn't respond to emails. Like
No.
I had to just really start texting, and texting was the only way that I could reach people. They didn't do email, they didn't do Zoom call, they just wanted to text. And if you needed to know if they got their hours in, you had to text them to find that out, right? So there's a lot at play. There's a lot of evolution, right, in this process. And I think the more we can perfect it and just make it respond to the people who are in the process or in the journey, the better, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes as leaders, owners, COOs, CEOs, we're making the process from our standpoint, but not necessarily from the applicant's standpoint. And I think that sometimes can be a big bottleneck or attract the wrong people or no people. And so I always like say, you got to take yourself out of that box and put yourself in the shoes of the applicant. Yes, you're right with the emails though.
Yeah,
Everybody text, and I think emails go back to the traditional way of recruiting.
yeah. What have you seen, or what have you seen some of the biggest mistakes that companies are making in the recruiting process, regardless of what size the company or, what they do?
So many, so many. Like the little mistakes are like, asking for people's running backgrounds before you even make an offer, right?
Mm,
You can't run a background check until you've extended a potential offer, right? Until you extended the offer. But I think the biggest mistake is the misalignment in companies when they think that like nobody wants to work, like the whole everybody sucks. All I'm getting is, you know, not great applicants. And it's to me, it's a total misalignment of what you're putting out there in your ad and how you're interviewing and how you're taking them through this process in this funnel, right? To in fact really attract the right people. And I think they just see the top of the iceberg, which is I'm getting, not quality applicants versus if you look at the bottom of the iceberg, it's how are you perceived online? What does your social media look like? What is your application? What's the experience? Are you actually a company that cares or do you just act like you care? And I think that's the biggest misalignment is that companies think, and that we work for, large $20 million companies down to companies grossing $250,000 a year, that it's the same across every size is they just think, let me post an ad on Indeed and I'm supposed to magically get these qualified applicants and they don't want to do the back end work because like that's not the fun work.
yeah. Well, and some of it too, I think there's a lack of communication on our part about what we do and who we are as an organization, right? And so, individuals are going and checking out your website, right? Hopefully that tells the story, but a lot of times it doesn't. Or some of these smaller companies may not even have a website, right? So
Yeah.
how are they getting that message out to, applicants about what they do and who they are? Because you don't want to just be another job, right?
Yeah, and I think that you can attract, there are great people out there that want to work. It's just how can you attract them? Are they attracted to your company and your values, right? And we convey that socially through websites and social media and video and picture. I'm like a big stickler on my social media sites and on my websites. I don't want stock pictures. I want you to see who we are and what we look like, and I want you to like envision yourself there versus, pulling stock images.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been going through that same conversation with some rebranding on our website that we're doing, and we're like, these are not us. These are not our
Yeah.
people. But that's their tradition, right? How has AI changed the course of things with your organization? I know, obviously there was some things happening in 2020, but the real big bang has really started to come along in the last 18 to 24 months, right? Where we've really seen a lot of change. Is that impacting what you're doing and how you're thinking about recruiting and that process? Because some of it feels a little impersonal to me. And so I'm curious your thoughts on that and what you've seen with, AI taking over the process.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of AI taking over the process because, it's a human, like we can't take the human out of recruiting. Now, we can use it to speed up certain things. We can use it to help us get to a result faster. And so I think that AI is a bridge, but not the pavement, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bridge to help us become faster or more competitive or even understand how to like put my interview questions into words. Like if I'm, you trying to use AI in my company more and more, but it's a bridge. It's not the
Mhm.
foundation. And so I see so many, you know, companies come up and it's like, oh, we have AI, applicant or AI bots call the applicants and this and that. And I'm like, employees are worth so much to your company. They're actually worth more than a customer most of the time. Like, especially in home service, a great technician for me could generate our company about $110,000, one person. And so that $110,000, hire, and then a customer is worth about $7,000 a year. And so we tend to put all this focus on like marketing and customer success and customer experience, but we fall short on the employee side when the employees are actually more valuable than a customer. You don't want to put sometimes you don't want to put AI in charge of picking that person or losing that person because it wasn't a human interaction.
Yeah.
You could lose out on some great potential candidates. So it's finding the balance of I can use it for speed and efficiency, but not to take the human out of the process.
Yeah. I think that's a concern for people right now. And it's one of the things that's maybe keeping them from using the things that work and not getting too caught up in these other things that they think, aren't ideal, right? The people aspect is so important to me, and I just don't know how you do it without, because I've read where some organizations are literally, doing the whole process up until, like they're screening and doing everything. If I'm a candidate, and maybe I don't know that I'm being screened by AI, but I think I'm going to figure it out, right? It's not that good at this point. So, yeah, I want to be
Yeah,
talking to real people.
and AI is great. We use it every day. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
We use it more internally to help us become more efficient, to help cut down tasks, to create speed so that we can then create more human interactions
Yeah.
versus doing some day-to-day monotonous tasks. So, you know, using it externally, sometimes you want to watch it because it can hallucinate. Like it's horrible at math and it's horrible at dates. Like, and so are they talking to the applicant about dates? Well, could they get the date wrong? Like
Uh-huh.
and so if I know it's wrong because I've asked it questions and called out AI like, hey, that's not right. And you're like, oh yeah, actually, after researching more, you're correct.
Yeah.
And so do you want to potentially put that in front of an applicant right now, or or use it internally to create, like I said, speed, scale,
Yeah.
efficiency?
Yeah. So I know out of all of that, you focused, as we mentioned at the front end, a lot on process and method. And so I think you've developed a methodology, right? And I don't know, does that have the same name as your podcast, The One Layer Deep, or what's the story behind that? Like what, tell me a
Oh,
little bit more
so
about that.
the podcast name is actually not One Layer Deep. We talk about One Layer Deep on the
Ah,
podcast.
gotcha.
Yeah. So One Layer Deep is also the title of the book that I'm releasing in September.
Okay.
So One Layer Deep is a methodology, and it's all about how to, cut out all the layers and just what is the one thing, what's the one simple thing I can do to move forward? Typically in business, we overcomplicate. And so I do have a methodology for creating, playbooks were super popular, but then nobody reads them. Like they've turned into they're the new SOP that sits on the shelf and collects dust.
Yeah.
And so we have a whole methodology of, we're creating plays and game plays to really help create speed in business. But it all goes back to being one layer deep. What's like cutting out all of the noise, like what does the business really need or really want? Cut down the layers, what can be taken out, and you execute like with speed. And so it's a methodology of keeping it simple.
Yeah. Well, I think that can apply to almost everything, right? Like the simpler you keep it, the better. We tend to build complex processes on top of things that are already complex, and either people are too afraid to change or break the mold. I just hired a couple of new people myself here in at Sapient, and one of the things I told them on the front end was, look, none of our processes are sacred. And nobody's going to get offended if you say, why are we doing it this way? Right. I don't want to be that person that says, because we've always done it that way. There's always a better way, just lurking around the corner, or a different way, or something that's more streamlined. And, I think we have to expect that people are looking for those ways because we're not always looking at that once we've moved on to the next big thing. Right.
Yeah. And I think we have changed as humans, like over time. And our attention spans have shortened. The way we consume content is different. And so for businesses, we kind of need to adjust to those things if we want our people to consume the information, if we want our team to consume the information. So for us, like one layer deep, the thought process around that is we took your traditional playbooks and we broke it down. So I call them plays, and they are very specific, short, digestible pieces of content that really get in front of that you get the right information at the right time in the right way to the right person in a clear, actionable with a clear, actionable step.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you do this with everything? Because what it is envision, it's like the TikTok of SOPs, right?
Yeah.
It's micro, and micro is the new way that everyone is learning. That's why you see on
Yeah.
social media, short form is popular.
Very popular. Yeah. If you're creating videos that are longer than a minute or two, forget about it. And some of it needs to be a few seconds. Like, what can you
Yes.
convey quickly that will stick with people? Yeah. Well, so through that process, I think the other thing I was reading about some of the stuff that you've worked on is from a culture and leadership perspective, right? That sort of now that you've got people working for you, it's that care and feeding of, your employees, and how you nurture those relationships and how you create new leaders. Because obviously You can't do everything, right? And so, and it's also fun. I mean, frankly, one of the things that I've learned about, running a business is creating those leaders. I mean, I did that in past jobs as W-2s, but it's not the same as when you run the business, you own the business, and you're seeing people step up and step into those leadership roles. What did you learn along the way about leadership and building leaders in the process?
So I learned that what I thought leadership was completely like the opposite. I thought it was like having to literally be there more, tell people what to do, like let's micromanage them, let's get in the way. It's really astonishing to me, like, and this is gonna sound horrible, but it's the lack of disrespect that owners have for like butting in and becoming the bottleneck. And I can say that because I was one of those owners. And that's not leading, that's like interrupting, right? That's
Yes.
micromanaging. And so I learned that for me to really become a great leader is that I had to work on myself. It's who did I need to be to show up, right? And
Yeah.
who did I need to be? So when I really found, and this is has nothing to do with business, I found that when I really started to work on myself and my mindset, I really started to eat right and exercise and really be conscious of those things. I also found my team was watching and they were a leader that they could follow. They were a leader that inspired them without even trying. And it was weird because I would post a lot of things on social media and they were all watching and following because in our weekly meetings, that was one of their wows and wins. They started to exercise. They followed the workout I was doing online. They cut out sugar because I don't eat sugar or carbs. They're following. That is like then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even have to ask them to do this."
Yeah.
And they're starting to follow. But I found that when I did that, I could step in and I really had a true understanding of myself and how I operated. Because I think when I first started, I was not a great leader at all, but I didn't even understand myself. So understanding like how you operate, your strengths, your weaknesses, when do you operate the best? A lot of us try to manage time instead of managing our energy. So making sure that I'm showing up when I'm my best. I'm always showing up consistently the right way. And that's hard to do when you don't have your life in control. So I learned that I had to start from me versus in business, we always put the business first and then like your family and then yourself. But I've learned that it's you first, then your family, then your business, because you can't
Yeah.
pour into that empty cup if you're empty.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then from there, like the way I was showing up, the way I was communicating, the clarity I had allowed me to really do more, run faster, and have more clarity or an intention and intention in what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah. That is so true because I think it's easy to underestimate new people coming into your organization that, well, they may not know exactly what we do, or they may not understand this or that, but they learn. They go after it. And I think sometimes we just have to let them go, right? And not
Yeah.
butt in on like tell them how to do things, right? You tell them what you want the outcome to be, and they'll figure it out. Um,
Absolutely. There's a phrase that says a great new hire will train themselves. Like if you think back, a lot of people always want to blame their training. Like, oh, they didn't make it through onboarding. They didn't make it through training. My training must be broken. Let me go remake the
yeah,
training. But there's a phrase that says a great new hire will train themselves to a certain point.
yeah. I had an aha moment once. And I'm sure you travel a lot as well, just being on planes all the time, and you have a lot of time to think. But I remember, sitting on the plane one day and deciding to pay attention to when they tell you what happens if there's an accident, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, she's telling you, put the mask on yourself before you try to help anyone else. And I was like, why don't we tell ourselves that, like, to your point a minute ago, like we have to help ourselves, we have to do better and make ourselves better if we expect anybody else to, to follow that or to be better as well. So I don't know, that kind of stuck with me. It's a really corny analogy, but it was just one that hit me funny that day. And I was like, this is what we don't do. We don't put the masks on ourselves before we try to help somebody else.
Well, I had this struggle in business, and I hear a lot of business owners that have this. They've grown the business or they've hired a new hire, and then all of a sudden they're not needed.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with that time. And they don't even know how to act because they've always just been needed. And now they're not needed. And they're like, but what do I do? And then they find themselves like butting in. Let me go butt in marketing and then in finance and let me go see what they're doing in HR. And not like measuring results, just like literally butting in.
Yeah.
And I think that business is made for a reason. When you really look at the core foundation and we start to hire and hand off those responsibilities and those roles, that time and space is made for you to go find out, for you to go work on who you need to be to be the next level leader.
Yeah.
Because you can't take a company from 1 to 5 million at the same, like even the same level that you're at right now. Like you can't take it from 5 to 10 million. And the reason I think we're given that space as owners is not to go eat potato chips on a couch. It's to go and discover ourselves and up level ourselves so that we're prepared to be the next level leader.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the next big thing? And then who are the next hires we need to bring in to help us
Mhm.
support that next big thing, right? You mentioned, measuring things. What are some of the metrics that, you track in the impact of your hiring and sort of those decisions that you've made? Are there some specific things that you're tracking that might be unique or, what are the things that you find to be the most important?
From just our customers that are hiring people or are hiring internally.
You're hiring, or
Um,
either for that matter, if people are using your tools to hire, obviously they need to look at
yeah.
metrics as well.
Yeah. We have tons of data because we've had just this year like 2 million applications. We've helped our industry like home service hire 10,000. Well, last time I looked, it was 10,000
Wow,
frontline
it's
labor.
amazing.
And I think for us and those, we measure a lot of show rate. Like, what the industry show rate is for us is not great, but it doesn't have to be that way. So by measuring it, we can tell. Also, we measure all of the data points. We have 11 of where an applicant journey starts and where they fall off. And so we know what like great looks like, we know what average looks like, and we know what absolutely horrible looks like. And we can tell where in those 11 data points the process is broken. Like, is there a gap? Are you overcomplicating this? Are you allowing too many days here? So we've really refined that for our customers and we track all that. And all of our customers have that on their dashboard. And like we help and coach them through that. I think and also another data point to track for our customers that we help that a lot of people don't track is, how many of your employees are like really getting ready to leave? We all want, career employees, but we know that COVID changed that and we see employees cycling out more. And what we find is that it causes major gaps because you're recruiting for what you think you need, but you're not really in touch with what you actually need because you have 4 people getting ready to leave. And, what's that new life cycle of the post-COVID entry level hire?
Yeah.
It has compressed as much as I want career employees as well. I think, especially in frontline labor, home service, they're far and far few between. They're looking for that next thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And as far as for us internally, some, things that we measure when it comes to recruiting, even though I own a recruiting company, it's pretty funny. I just hired an HR expert from Amplify, the software. And, I told him, I said, I'm just going to tell you right now, we might be a recruiting company, but we don't have it figured out internally because we're a fairly new software. And so, like, what the position I'm getting ready to hire you for, I haven't even made a job description because that's how fast I move. I'm like,
Yeah.
again, you said as the owner, we need to go forecast and prepare what's that next hire. I get that idea. I'm like, oh, I'm going to start right now.
Yeah.
And, we measure a lot of things off of our core values. I do a lot of core value questions, like a lot of core value, just conversation as do they fit like the core values of the company when it comes to like really getting what we do. Because it's
Yeah.
not easy to recruit for the home service industry. It's challenging. We have,
Yeah.
you know, especially in residential cleaning and commercial cleaning and in lawn care, we have like a 300% turnover rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. I have my brother and sister-in-law both have their own business, and one is a cleaning business and one is a lawn business. And yeah, it's a constant challenge.
Yeah, so we always focus really on those core values and that culture of our new employees coming into our software because it is a challenging industry and you really have to be empathetic and you really want to have to help because when a business owner is in the deficit, they lost four people and they needed to hire, desperation mode kicks in and you have to be willing to like understand that and like take action.
Yeah.
So yeah, we look at a lot of core values. I do a lot of, we call them test projects. We have our top couple candidates and we give them a couple projects without much instruction because I want to see how they work before we work with them.
Yeah.
Like maybe organize this Google Drive, like, hey, here's a list of things to set up, like schedule a dinner, just little tactical things. It really doesn't matter the role. It's more how do they communicate and what questions do they ask? Like, hey,
Yeah.
we need to buy the customer a gift. Here's $100 budget. Do they just go buy anything or do they actually ask thoughtful questions on, well, hey, do you know what that customer's favorite restaurant is or what's their favorite color?
Yeah. Well, and I was just looking at some numbers this week of the job insights or whatever, and the number of days to hire is getting longer again. And I mean, in your business, you don't have 45 days to bring somebody on board. I mean, it's and in a lot of these organizations, that's just way too long. No matter what kind of business it is, a month and a half to fill a position. Think of the lost time there, the lost opportunity.
The lost money, revenue, right? When you're turning away work because you're
Uh-huh.
understaffed. And I think a lot of those reports, you know, they're made more for that C-suite, like that middle to higher level hires. When we're talking entry level, frontline labor, restaurants, fast food, home service, I'm seeing it 6 to 8 days to hire. Like a great applicant is taken off that market in 6 to 8 days. Someone's gonna swoop them up and
Yeah.
hire them on the spot. They're gonna walk into a Home Depot or a McDonald's and get hired on the spot
I would hope
versus
so. Yeah.
if you're in this industry and you're drawing out your recruiting process and you're spending money on it,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to lose a lot of money because your competitors are not taking 45 days to hire. They're hiring fast because they're losing that lost revenue. They're leaving it on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. Is there anything that you would leave the audience with today? A tip, a trick, something that you think they should be thinking about, whether it's related to recruiting or leading, something like that they could do immediately?
It's more of a thought process, right? And this goes more for our service-based industries, is that there's two stresses in business when it comes to recruiting. You can have the stress of being understaffed and be turning away revenue, and you can have the stress of being overstaffed and having to find a way to fill those schedules or bring those people in, those leads or customers in. The choice is yours, whether you want to be overstaffed or understaffed. They're both stressful, but you just have to choose that hard.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect, right? I mean, that balance, you might hit that balance a few times, but it's pretty rare.
It's pretty
Most of
short-lived
the
too when you
most
hit
of the
it.
time you're in one side or the other of that, right? So you have to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciated talking to you today. What is the name of your podcast, by the way?
It's the Libby DeLucien podcast.
Okay, Libby. Okay, all right. I didn't realize it was just your name. Well,
Yes.
very cool. That and the one layer deep. I love that. I think that's something that we need to talk a little bit about offline. I need to figure some of those things out. That would be fun. So it's been great having you. I want to remind people to listen to my sister podcast, Stacey and Cliff Show, Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, which will be out next week. So don't forget to listen to that. Thank you, Libby, for joining us today. Where can people find you online and on social?
So the great thing is I'm the only Libby DeLucien in the world. So it's very easy to find me. If you Google me, it's my website, it's all the social media handles. So you can find me on social media or at libbyd.com if you can't spell my last name.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention you have a children's book out about leadership. So
Yes,
people might want to check that out too. That sounded really interesting. I need to get a copy of that because I've got lots of great nieces and nephews who need to start learning about those things.
it was
Uh,
probably one of the funnest projects I ever did with my kids.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Well, thank you. I want to thank our producer, Brand Method Media Group, Kelly and her team. I want to thank our marketing team, Kendall and Summer and Cole, and the team that makes sure we get this podcast out to you. And thank you for tuning in. That's all the time we have for this episode of HR We Have a Problem. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and let us know what you'd like to hear about. We love getting tips from the listeners to say what they'd like to hear about on the next episode. You can also drop us a line or schedule a chat on the website. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of HR We Have a Problem. Thanks, everybody.